It started with a promise, a sanctuary from the world's cruelty, a place where everyone would be equal, safe, and loved. Thousands believed it, few questioned it. And yet, behind the smiles, behind the sermons, a nightmare was quietly taking root. In the 1950s, Jim Jones appeared on the American religious scene as a young, fiery preacher with a vision that seemed almost revolutionary. He founded the temple in Indianapolis, preaching equality, love, and salvation to the poor, the marginalized, and the disenfranchised. To outsiders, he was a hero, a man who cared about the sick, the downtrodden, and the voiceless. He desegregated his congregation before it was fashionable, fed the hungry, and gave hope to those society had abandoned. But there was a duality to his charm. Beneath the public persona of compassion and heroism lay a man obsessed with control. His words inspired devotion, but his methods planted dependency. Members were drawn into a web of admiration and fear, loyalty and manipulation. The more they believed, the more they obeyed. And the more they obeyed, the more they surrendered pieces of their freedom, their reason, their lives. This is where paradise began and where the shadows started to grow. By the time the world would understand the true extent of what was happening, it would be too late. The line between salvation and tragedy had already been crossed. By the 1960s, Jim Jones had transformed from a local preacher into a figure of national curiosity and admiration. His message resonated deeply with those whom society often overlooked: the poor, the disabled, African Americans, and those yearning for equality. In a time of civil unrest, his people's temple became a haven, a place where people could belong, where their struggles were acknowledged and their voices mattered. Jones preached not just salvation, but action. Members were encouraged to fight for civil rights, to participate in voter registration drives, to serve their communities. The church was more than spiritual. It was social, political, and practical. Schools, daycares, and food programs flourished under his guidance, and the media hailed him as a modern prophet, a man who bridged faith with social activism. But as the temple grew, so did Jones's charisma-fueled authority. He became a larger-than-life figure, the heart and mind of a growing congregation that hung on his every word. Members were drawn not only to his ideals, but to the persona he cultivated: confident, unflinching, and seemingly incorruptible. His skill at reading people, understanding their fears and desires, allowed him to mold their loyalty into near-total obedience. Praise and punishment were intertwined. Love and fear danced hand in hand. The line between admiration and dependency began to blur, and for many, leaving the temple would have felt like abandoning their own salvation. By the end of this period, Jim Jones was more than a preacher, he was a phenomenon. Newspapers featured him, politicians courted him, and thousands of Americans saw him as a moral compass in a turbulent society. Yet, beneath the accolades and social programs, the subtle mechanisms of control were already taking root. The same man who spoke of love and equality also began testing the limits of loyalty, planting seeds that would later blossom into tragedy. The rise was intoxicating, powerful, and dangerously seductive, and it was only the beginning. By the mid-1970s, Jones's paranoia had intensified. He envisioned a sanctuary free from scrutiny and oppression, a place where his followers could build a true perfection. That place became Jonestown, deep in the jungles of Guyana. Thousands relocated to the remote settlement, leaving behind friends, families, and former lives. Members were promised peace, equality, and protection from the world's evils. Jones's rhetoric portrayed Jonestown as a revolutionary experiment in collective living, a paradise forged by faith and labor. Life in Jonestown, however, was far harsher than promised. Hard labor, strict schedules, and constant surveillance were daily realities. Jones maintained control through fear, indoctrination, and ritualized demonstrations of loyalty. Those who questioned him were punished or humiliated. Supplies were scarce, healthcare limited, and the psychological pressure relentless. While outsiders saw a bold experiment in community building, insiders were trapped in a regime that blurred the line between idealism and tyranny. Paradise, they learned, had a hidden cost: their freedom, their agency, and eventually, their lives. By the late 1970s, Jonestown had become a tightly controlled enclave. Jones's paranoia was now pervasive. He drilled members in White Knight's mock mass suicides designed to test loyalty. Threats of violence from outside forces were real or imagined. Dissent was equated with betrayal of God and community. Every decision, every action, every thought of a follower was monitored. Escaping Jonestown was nearly impossible, as fear, psychological manipulation, and geographic isolation intertwined to create a suffocating grip on the population. Jones's speeches became increasingly apocalyptic, warning of inevitable annihilation by enemies of the temple. Children were included in indoctrination sessions. Loyalty became hereditary. Families were coerced into demonstrating absolute obedience, and those who hesitated were labeled traitors. A culture of fear and suspicion pervaded Jonestown, poisoning relationships and distorting reality. Paradise had become a prison, and the cracks in the utopian facade widened daily, hinting at the tragedy that would soon engulf them all. In November 1978, concern from the outside world reached a tipping point. Allegations of abuse, coercion, and psychological manipulation prompted Congressman Leo Ryan to visit Jonestown with a small delegation. His presence unnerved Jones and destabilized the fragile equilibrium of obedience he had created. Some followers secretly hoped to leave with Ryan, testing the boundaries of loyalty and courage. Tensions escalated rapidly. Jones's paranoia peaked. He prepared his followers for confrontation, warning of violence and betrayal. Those who tried to escape were captured or threatened. In a horrifying twist, the dream of utopia collided with the reality of external scrutiny. Ryan's delegation became a target, and the lines between self-preservation, fanaticism, and fear blurred. By the end of the visit, tragedy was no longer a possibility, it was imminent. The stage was set for one of the darkest moments in modern history. The 18th of November 1978 marked the climax of a nightmare. Under Jones's direction, over 900 men, women, and children died in a mass suicide murder, consuming a cyanide-laced drink, while some were forcibly administered the poison. Jonestown, once imagined as a paradise, became a tomb. The horror shocked the world. Families, friends, and entire communities were obliterated in a single chilling day. Survivors recounted a mix of fear, obedience, and love twisted into coercion. Jones's promises of salvation were inverted into instruments of death. The tragedy exposed the terrifying potency of charisma, isolation, and psychological control. In the aftermath, survivors struggled with grief, trauma, and the weight of incomprehensible loss. Families sought answers, governments demanded accountability, and journalists chronicled the horror. Jim Jones was gone, but the echoes of his influence lingered. The story of Jonestown became a grim lesson in the dangers of blind devotion, the vulnerabilities of the human psyche, and the perils of authoritarian leadership masquerading as benevolence. Today, Jonestown is remembered not just as a site of tragedy, but as a cautionary tale. Charisma can inspire, but it can also enslave. Hope can heal, but it can also deceive. And communities, even those built on the promise of equality and love, can be transformed into instruments of control when fear replaces reason. Jim Jones's legacy is forever entwined with questions about morality, power, and the human capacity for both faith and folly. The story of the People's Templars, a story of humanity's darkest vulnerabilities, and a haunting reminder that paradise, when corrupted, can become a grave. Jones himself did not die the same way with poison. Instead, Jim Jones was found dead with a gunshot wound to the head, lying near his chair at the pavilion where the mass deaths occurred. Investigators later concluded that he likely shot himself, though some theories suggest he may have had assistance. Unlike many of his followers, he did not drink the poison he ordered others to take. His body was discovered alongside the victims in Jonestown, bringing an abrupt and haunting end to the man who once promised paradise but led his followers into one of the darkest tragedies in modern history. In the aftermath, his body was eventually returned to the United States. He was cremated, and his ashes were scattered. His legacy became a chilling case study in manipulation, cult psychology, and unchecked power. The story of Jim Jones didn't end with his death. It became a lasting warning. His rise and fall are still studied today as an example of how charisma, control, and fear can be used to influence and ultimately destroy hundreds of lives. Please subscribe to this channel for more dark historical stories that many may have forgotten. Comment, like, and share. Subscribe.